I'm Kevin. I'm an alcoholic. Phil, can you unco-host me, please? Because I have what I've come to find out is this like somewhere in between ADD thing, and I get distracted easily. Thank you. That way I don't see that way I don't want to play whack-a-mole with Jay while I'm talking. Because I will do the door and be talking about step two the whole time. Because I have to do two. Anyway, shut up. I'm Kevin. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you all. So this was supposed to be the meeting where I talk um, about my 8 years in AA. It's supposed to be last week, but then I got a call like 2 weeks before that. I'm gonna wait till she comes back because she needs to hear this. So I started drinking at 11 years old. There's gonna be a big like come back to this and come back to that as soon as I see Elizabeth come back and scream. So I'm gonna put her. Matter of fact, put her up here next to me. All right. So I've spoke here twice, and it's a crazy thing. God help me set it. Hold on, take a second, y'all. Because I'm excited. Like I don't get excited to talk all the time. Like before we got here today, I was not excited to talk. Like I called my sponsor and I was like, what is this? And she was like, I get it. She said, it's just your own mind telling you lies. And this is why we have to have sponsors. Because see, my brain, while it's lying to me, is never going to allow me to make that connection. It's my hair is nuts right now. I took my hat off to pray and started talking about something else. Take a moment, y'all. I'm gonna say the St. Francis prayer. Try to get my head set straight, or a version of it. Might be like a freestyle of St. Francis. I don't think St. Francis minds. Of course, I'm making an assumption. He probably can't stand it. I gotta find it. There it is. Moment of silence for the still sick and suffering alcoholics inside and outside of the rooms. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self forgetting that one finds, it is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen. It's funny. I usually open up with the set aside prayer and put my hat of insecurities on, because it makes me feel better. If I can get Pat to laugh during any of this, I've accomplished something. Because Pat don't laugh, y'all. I ain't never seen Pat laugh. I'm kidding, Pat. I'm kidding. Um, the line that is constantly running through my head. And if anybody that like gets the privilege to do this, like I'm doing right now, I always have a line that's like in the back of my head, and like right now, it's if the newcomer cannot see us laugh, why would the newcomer not want? Why would the newcomer want to be here? And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but I read the big book in the language that it makes sense to me. I don't read like I might quote it word for word every now and again, but I read it so I understand it, and that way we can best translate it to others. So that's the sentence. It's somewhere in between page 126 and 138. Somewhere in between there. Pretty sure 124 and 120 and 134 or something like that. But anyway, somewhere that's it's kind of been the running theme in my sobriety is laughter, not taking myself too seriously, but taking my recovery very serious. Where'd you go? So we'll go back to it. Like I was supposed to speak on my 8-year anniversary, and then she calls me, and she's super nervous, by the way, because she doesn't want to like ask me not to do it. But she knows me. Well, we know, and through this Zoom platform, I've gotten to know Carol, Elizabeth, and Phil, and I know Pat enough to mess with Pat. We've done service together. Like I've gotten to know a few people like pretty good, like more than just a few. So she asked me, "Hey, I've been trying to get Marty to speak for months, and I finally got a hold of him, and he can speak on the 6th when you're speaking." I said, Absolutely, let Marty do it." And so I gave Marty crap last week, but I just want to make sure you guys know that whatever I do in Alcoholics Anonymous is not about me. It's I'm only here by the grace of God and Alcoholics Anonymous and what you guys have done, um, to direct, to help direct the thinking in my life. And it's amazing where the direction comes from, because it's not directly like Betty tells me what to do, right? Even though Betty would, we all know it. We all know Betty has no problem telling Kevin what to do, right? But it's not that Betty tells me what to do, right? It's that Betty needs me to be here because I am the host of the meeting. And I need Phil to be here because Phil's the host of the meeting. Okay. Like in that way, I'm being told, you got a job to do. Not Betty doing it, but Betty's a symbol of Alcoholics Anonymous. Gabriel's a symbol, and James Parks is a symbol of Alcoholics Anonymous. Right. So I take your instruction. Like there's a line on page 88, and it's one of my favorite lines in the book. And it says, "We let God discipline us in these simple ways." And I believe, and we'll go into it later because I hold on, we'll get into that later because I want to talk about what I'm getting anyway. I believe God is in every single one of us. Okay. And that's the only voice that I hear. Some people say I hear a voice. It's my voice. It's a voice in my head, and it's in my voice, but it's not my voice. And see, I can't even requote what they're saying because I've been able to identify. Because see, I've always known my brain lies to me because my mom has been telling me that for years. I'd be like, "Mom, I think because me and my mom have a special relationship. Me and my mother have the same birthday. She raised me by herself for 6 years from an abusive dad who threatened to kill us when I was between 4 and 6 years old. Well, I know exactly how old I was, but it was like somewhere in my late what time I was in between, like by my 5th birthday. So I would say stuff to my mom, and I say that to say this because I would say the weirdest crap to my mom growing up. I would say, "Mom, that woman's hot," and she'd be like, "She's flirting with you." Like this is the open relationship that me and my mother had. And I was truly blessed to have this relationship. Like my mom would always tell me, like after the fact, "Kevin, that girl was flirting with you," and I would say, "Well, why didn't you tell me while she was here?" Because see, I don't have a clue. I am oblivious to everything. Like I can't tell you when somebody's flirting with me. I have no right. But my mom can pick it up immediately. She's like, so like I don't even know where that was going, but part of me just wanted me to tell you about my mom. But like it's so where I was going is we'll just get to it. Like I had this idea. Like, where do we go today? Because I know that Phil really cares about all of you. He cares about what you think about this meeting. Like you don't understand. 2 years ago, 2 years, Phil, year and a half that I've been doing this with you, right? Something like that. I called Phil, and a lot of people know me from the Bronx Big Book, and I was one of the hosts of the Bronx Big Book, and I did that for a long time. And But it was time for me to move away from that so somebody else could have that seat. Like, so somebody else could have that service position. But I knew I was going to need to do something. And I really liked this meeting because, see, I was moving here where I live now. And the brick and mortar version of this meeting, it's only like 2.5 hours away or something. So I called Phil and I was like, hey, Phil, you've been hosting that meeting for like 4 years. It's my turn. And I didn't say it like that, but I was like, hey, what do you think about let me host the meeting for a while and you taking a break and going to in-person meetings if you want. And I think it's only because of me being host of the Bronx Big Book that he said yes. Like, it was that comfort level that, okay, Kevin actually knows technically what he's doing. So I'm gonna say yes to this because I'm gonna like Phil didn't say yes like eventually, like right away. Phil called his sponsor and he prayed about it. And finally he came to the conclusion that, yeah, I need a break. And it wasn't because of y'all, but it was because he's been here every week. And let me tell you something. I know for a fact that when you're running service, especially one night a week, everything happens on that Saturday night when you want to go out. Like every everything happens on the one night you want to go out. The other 6 days a week, nothing's happening. But the one night, and so I said, Phil, maybe let me do it. And yeah, he said yes, and this is how you got me. And if you're new or if you just got to Alcoholics Anonymous, or maybe you've never had I don't want to say courage, like lack the courage, but that's really what it is, or self-confidence. Let's say that to be of service in a way where you have to talk to faces. Um, I encourage you to do it. It's one of my favorite things to do is to talk to you, and not just talk to you, but say something that is inspiring enough to get you to make me listen to you. Like, I want to say something to where you go, oh, check this out. Like, because see, we are a fellowship of storytellers, and this is what we do. All right, so that's a really long-winded way of saying Phil really cares about you, right? So he gets super nervous like when people speak again. He was like, what are they gonna talk about? And I was like, they're gonna tell their story. He was like, no, they've already done that. Right. So he goes, I want you to call them and tell them to talk about step 10. And I'm like, no, you do it. And he was like, well, you're the host. And then he'll hang up on me or something like that. Right. No, he didn't hang up on me. I'm kidding. But we'll do it. And so today, earlier, you guys have spent the last year and a half getting to know me. So for me to say, like, tell you a story, like I'm going to tell you, I'm going to qualify, but I also want to, there's a couple lines in the big book that I really live my life by. And let's go over them. So I started drinking when I was 11 years old. And 11 was an amazing summer for me. It was one of the best summers I've ever had. Why? Because it's the only summer I remember. I'm serious. I remember like 2 summers, and one was I was 11 and I got drunk, I got arrested, and I lost my virginity all in the same summer. It was amazing. Like, and then I look at my cousin, my little nephew. Time fast forward years later, and I'm sober like 1 month, like I'm like 7 months sober. I was only in Baltimore for 2 months, but my brother looks at me and goes, I'm really worried about Connor, which is my nephew. Connor's 13 years old and he's a giant. He's like 6'2" at 13, and he's like 280 pounds. He's a monster of a person. The biggest sweetheart you ever met in your life, though. Like, he's built like a Great Dane, but he's got the attitude of a pug. Like, he's just cuddly and he's hard. He can't breathe. I'm just kidding. But like Marty looks at me and goes, I'm really worried about Connor. Like, what kind of decisions is he going to make when he gets older? And I'm the really great uncle, so I know how old my nieces and nephews are. So I look at Marty and say, "How old is he?" Um, and he goes, "He's 13." And I said, "Do you remember what I was doing when I was 11?" And he kind of paused and he went, "What do you mean?" I said, "Marty, I got drunk. I started smoking weed. I got arrested. I lost my virginity." I said, any one of those four things do you think Connor's doing?" He said, "Oh no." I said, "Then he's fine. He's fine. I promise you he's okay." And he goes, "Huh?" I said, "Bro, me and you and Ryan, me, it's my brother. I said, we turned out okay. And I tried to destroy the world that I was given. The world that I was given, I tried to destroy it. And I tried to do it on purpose. Like I remember sitting at a bar at 22 years old. And by the way, I'm 46 and I'm 8 years sober. And I got a dad who's 32 years sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. So when I start drinking at 11, that means he gets sober at 12. And I can't stand you guys because all of a sudden I can't get away with nothing. Because the guy that used to drink don't no more, and I can't get away with anything anymore. Like that's why I say the year that I was 11 was amazing. Because the next year, dad's sober and that's over. Like I didn't know that rhymed until now. So so I know about AA, right? So yeah, I don't like you and I want to rip the world down because what I didn't know is there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with my thought process. Well, there is when you want to burn the world down, there's something a little wrong with it. But like what I didn't know is that alcohol treats alcoholism. Anybody that's new in here. Step one teaches me that I'm going to drink no matter what. That's why I can never, for the life of me, figure out why people get mad at people in here for drinking. I cannot figure out why I get phone calls from people who sponsor people and go, "I can't believe my sponsee drank." What do you mean? What do you mean? That's what we do, people. We drink. Like I'm wired to drink. Hold on. I haven't finished all my financial amends, so I got creditors calling me. Sorry. Um, you might want to set your phones to silent. Hey, look, I'm just being open and honest here. Still working on it. My favorite part about AA is you're allowed to make mistakes. Um, Matter of fact, when I do make a mistake and it wasn't on purpose, that's where I learn. Even if it was on purpose, I learned. But anyway, I never understand why people get mad at people for drinking in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I'm going to tell you what, I I've never heard this, but I'm going to guess that 90% of the people in AA don't live the way I live. Because the meetings I go to in person here, the minute I start talking about the big book, they shut down. Nobody talks to me, right? But if I go in there and complain about my hip, not having a hip, and how somebody kicked my neighbor's dog, or how I feel, everybody loves it. But when you start talking about a solution to a group of people who have no idea what you're talking about, they can't identify with you. It's not their fault, right? It's just not their fault because I lived that way a long time. And I say a long time. I've only been sober 8 years. That's not even like out of high school yet. So I shouldn't even say that. But like I got sober. I lived that way a few years, right? When I got sober, I got sober in this little town called Solomon's Island, Maryland. And if you've been to the East Coast of Maryland, not Maryland, the only coast that Maryland has is the East. So it's the East Coast of America, right? Maryland is it's a boating town with a drinking problem. Drinking town with a boating problem. Sorry, flip that reverse. It's got about 9 bars and 6 churches, and it's a mile long. I think Rhode Island's wider than it, but it's not much bigger. But Um, it was a lot of don't drink, go to meetings, do whatever you do, don't drink, just go to a meeting. And I got to be honest, that worked for me for a while. That worked because see, in AA, there's recovery, unity, and fellowship. There's that three-sided triangle. I love what my buddy Frank says. He says the reason there's a circle around that triangle is so you can lean on it and steer it in which side of the triangle you need it on. Right. And I got sober and stayed sober a few years on unity alone. Now I did the steps like to the best of my ability. I did the steps. And I was allowing them to work in my life. I was getting up every day. I would say step 3. I would stay step 7. I would read 84 to 88. I would go to a meeting and I would try to help an alcoholic. And from what I've heard in the meetings that I've been to, not everybody does that. Which amazed me because that saved my life. Pages 84 to 88 saved my life. Like, not just reading them, though, like applying them, pausing when doubtful, understanding that as long as my brain is divorced from self pity, dishonesty, and self seeking motives, I'm allowed to use my head again. Because, see, I come from a place where they tell you, don't think about anything. You're not allowed to think. Your thinking privileges are revoked. Can't tell somebody like me like that because I'll call my sponsor and be like, Mark, can I brush my teeth? And then I'll call him again and I'll be like, dude, am I allowed to eat dinner? By the time we got done, he was so pissed off at me. Like he gave me my thinking privileges back at step 6. Like you can think again. Like, because I wore him down, but Wes has got a great background. I love that background. Stand by me. But I'm thinking about Mark right now. Like I said his name and I said something and then there's a bunch of memories flood in. I talked to him the other day and I said, guess what today is? And he said, April 6th. And I said, yeah. And he goes, all right, call me later. I said, you bastard. I called him back and I said, no. I said, it's 8 years. He said, no, that was April 1st. I said, but you didn't call me then either. He said, yeah, but you didn't call me either. Right. It's the dynamic that him and I have is I hope I cherish it to this day. He's the one that showed me that it was okay to have, dare I say, intimacy with another man. Like it's okay. Like I didn't know that I could cry with another dude in a minivan at a graveyard. Like that's where we did my 5th step. I'm crying in a white minivan. Like he's crying, we're holding hands, and he's like, God's over there. And I'm like, I'm crying in front. but it was okay. And there was a huge release. Like he made it okay to not be okay. Like he made it he's the one that is like he's the one that made it okay. Like he made AA cool, is what I'm saying. Right. I was sitting in a meeting one day and he had his legs crossed. And for all the men that do this, I commend you. I don't know how men cross their legs all the way. I've never been able to do that. Like, how do you do that? Like, but he had his legs all the way crossed. And then he had his penny loafers on and he had this picnic table shirt. Like it was red and white and buttoned up to the neck. And he says, I am Mark. I'm an alcoholic. I didn't get sober not to have fun. And I said, there's my sponsor. And I walked up to him afterwards and I said, will you be my sponsor? He said, why? And I told him, I said, when you said that, I went back to my high school, a conversation I had with my high school guidance counselor. She asked me one time what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I told her retired. Like that's what I wanted to do because retired seemed fun, right? And Mark said, I didn't get sober not to have fun. And he said, you really said that to your guidance counselor? I said, yeah. And he came to understand a little later that my brain works quicker than a hiccup. Like I get a response to every single person in here when they say something. I just don't say it ever. Like it'll come out every now and then, like involuntarily, but I can't hold them all in. But yeah, my dad told me that one time. He said, "Boy, you quicker than a hiccup." And then I heard, and I couldn't. I was like, "That is the greatest saying I've ever heard." And then I'm listening to wrestling the next week, and I heard him say it. And then I was like, "Dad, you watch wrestling?" He said, "Yeah." Like I didn't know my dad watched wrestling. We started bonding over it. But if you're from where I'm from, it's not wrestling; it's wrestling. Um, it said nothing where I live right now says that you don't say it like it sounds, like it's spelled. Nothing, none. Right? Phil knows. I had a moment today where I went and talked to my cousin who works at Food Line down the street, and a whole bunch of like 4 or 5 people came up and hugged her. And she looks at me, and I looked at her, and she said, "What?" And I said, "All them people over there?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "That's what I tell my friends in Maryland what my family looks like." And she started laughing because let me tell you, they were hillbillies like me. Like, and she, I get so amazed at the life that I live today. What time is it? 8:36. All right. And from drinking at 11 years old to 16 years old, my dad picking me up at 16. I was aspirating on my own vomit. My dad gave me a bath, a bottle of Tylenol, a water bottle, and an axe. Like not at the same time, but like he gave me a bath the night before. He woke me up at 6 o'clock in the morning after putting me to bed at 4 in the morning and makes me chop wood all day. It's the first time he ever caught me drunk. And that night he took me to an AA meeting because he didn't know what to do with me. He didn't have a clue. What do you do as a parent? Because the one thing my dad did tell me, he said, "Are you done drinking?" I said, "No." And he said, "Then I can't help you." He said, "I wish I could help you." He said, "But what I can do is tell you what's going to happen if you ever come home and do it again." And he wasn't lying. I was born in the 70s and I wasn't raised in the 80s, but I don't know if I'm a 90s baby or an 80s baby, right? Because I'm a late generation X. I'm like 1978. But I'm from the era where your parents still whipped your ass, is what I'm saying. So at 16 years old, my dad took me out back and let me know that I might be strong. I might be third in the state in wrestling, but that ain't grown man strong. Like there's a difference between 16-year-old strength as a boy and grown man strong. Like, and my dad let me know what that was. I came home drunk again. And my mom stood there and watched him. Like he said, "Come on." And he said, "If you can get up after I put you down, you can drink all you want." I couldn't get up. Like I just couldn't get up off the ground. Like, and I was pissed. And he said, if you come home again like that, I'm kicking you out. And I knew better then. Like I knew better and this is how I knew better. Because my best friend was watching all this happen from the door and she did nothing. Like there was a line that we crossed. Like, and I had already crossed it and I wasn't even an adult yet. So when I got out of high school, I couldn't wait to be let free. So they send me away. They don't send me away, but I get I get I get accepted to some weird school in the middle of Iowa. And I swear Iowa, I loved the people in Iowa, but I swear it's where birds go to die. Like there is nothing to land on. There's no trees. There's like corn stalks. I bet they get so tired they just fall out of the sky. Like you don't fly over that state. You go around it. But like I drank myself out of college in like in one semester. I got two memories in that place, and one of them is me coming out of a blackout in my underwear, running around the dorm. Like drank myself, and I lived in Maryland, so they had to come 1,500 miles to come get me. Like, and I did this to my parents my whole life. When I started drinking, I can't stop drinking. Not only can I not stop, I can't stop and not start again. Like I'll tell you, and I'll make one hell of an effort. I stayed sober for 2 years one time on a resentment. I did. I was pissed. My dad told me that I couldn't do it and that I was weak. And I said, I'll show you. And 2.5 years later, I was in jail. Like he coming this now, and that was the time. And I only remember that because that was the time that he picked me up out of jail. It was only the second time that he had ever picked me up. He uh he said, don't ever call home again. Don't ever call the house again. Well, if you're in jail, we're not accepting. Now, see, when my stepdad said things like this to me, I know that he has already cleared it with my mother. Because, see, the one beautiful thing about that man is that he never got involved. As a step parent, he never got involved when my mom could handle it. Like he gave me the perfect plan to be a stepdad, right? If I ever get to do that. But when he stepped in, I knew there was no BS. So I got locked up a bunch more after that, and I never called home. Um, it's amazing what we let our consequences get to before we say I'm done. Like I come from an upper middle class family. Like my parents have money, and I say that because I don't. Like it's the famous Cosby Show line, right? When Theo goes, "My parents are rich," and Bill and Mr. Huxtable goes, "But you ain't. Me and your mama are rich. We ain't." Like my parents remind me of that often because we mess with each other. But at the same time, I love being where I'm at today. So yeah, I love to drink, and when I start drinking, I can't stop drinking. And I know I've talked about way more than that in this 40 minutes, but so there's a line on page 28, and what seemed at first a flimsy reed turns out to be the ever loving hand of God. I love that line because that is Alcoholics Anonymous to me. Because we don't look like much. We don't. We don't look like much at all. We're just a bunch of broken people standing outside of a church, waiting for the dude with the key. Right. But this is the strongest. It's like silk. It's one of the strongest organizations or fellowships because together nothing can break us because it's not us. It's some spiritual divine force, and you can call it what you want. The arrogance of being American is that we call it God and we think that it has to be God, right? And that's not true. I got the privilege of speaking in India one time, and I'm sharing, and I get done, and there was like 30 or 40 people in there, and they're all from India. And India is a big place, by the way. There's a billion people there, and every single not, and there wasn't a billion people in a meeting. Don't get me wrong, that'd be one hell of a Zoom bill. But like, but I get done sharing, and all these other guys and gals that are in there, they start talking about God, and this ain't the version that I'm thinking of. because they didn't have the same version over there. Richard Rohr says this, right? And I love this. It's one of my favorite lines that he ever said. He said, I'm a healer by nature. That's why I'm a priest. Because I'm American, because I was born in America, I'm a priest. If I was born in the Middle East, I'd be an imam. If I was born in Africa, I might be a witch doctor or a shaman. It's not, if I was born in Japan, I might be a monk. If I was born in India, I'd be a Hindu or some other, whatever their version is. He said, but I'm a healer. And this is the path of the healer. My role for God in my life really got shaped by Alcoholics Anonymous and paying attention to you, by what Richard Rohr said, because he's only a priest geographically. Okay. Like if he's born somewhere else, his title's different, but his job's the same. He's a healer. And what these people in India were doing when they were saying God after I shared, because they weren't talking about the God that I was thinking about. Or maybe they were. Who knows? The one thing Mark taught me is that God's not lost, you are. Okay? Stop looking. Because you're never going to find something you have no idea what you're looking for. Like, I wouldn't know what God was if he tapped me on the shoulder and asked me for $1. I'd probably look at him and say, I ain't got no cash, bro. That's probably what I'd do, because I probably wouldn't have any cash. And I would miss God if that was God's parameters. Thank God that's not God's parameters. Thank God he doesn't ask for $1. Because I've been broke since I've been AA. Like I've been broke. Like I don't know if you've ever been hungry, but whew, you start to really like food when you get hungry. Anything tastes good. That's why there's no gluten allergies in Africa. Right? Or wherever. There's too much food here is what I'm saying. Anyway. That has nothing to do with AA. Sorry. It has something to do with my soapbox. When I got to AA, I didn't understand. Like I knew I really liked that verse. I knew I really loved it, but I didn't understand what it meant. The strength in AA is it's not about what you see. You know, you only understand the strength in alcohol, the spirituality of Alcoholics Anonymous, when you really grab hold of this and do everything you and do everything you can to try to pull it out the ground, because it ain't coming. It ain't coming out the ground. Or that might have been like that. That's just the analogy that I tried, because that's what I did. That's what I do with everything. I'm a line stepper. I like try to find the line and I step over it and see if I get in trouble. And if I don't get in trouble, I draw another line and step over that one until I do get in trouble, and then I apologize. Like that's how I live my life. But the flimsy reed, you just hang on. And it doesn't matter the weather. It doesn't matter what's going on outside. The reed grabs you back and it holds on with you. You know, it seemed at first a flimsy reed. Turns out to be the ever-loving hand of God. We have a solution that really works. This is a design for living that really works. When I read that, that's when I knew. This isn't about drinking. This isn't about not drinking. Like it's a funny thing. I was talking to a friend of mine about quitting smoking the other day. And I said, I quit smoking every time I went to jail. And she said, what? I said, I would. There's something inside of me. I would walk into jail and I wouldn't crave a cigarette for 30 days because something inside of me knew that I couldn't have one. So part of me would just be like, nope. And I got out of jail though. The minute I got out of jail, I want a cigarette though. Like that's a lot like that's a lot like that's a lot like AA. I've never wanted a drink since I got into Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm scared to know. The one thing I had, I have very few fears, I think, because I realize this isn't my life anymore. But the fears that I do have are hypothetical. Like, what if this and what if that? You play the what if game? Like, what if I get too far away from God and I go drink again? That's a fear. But then I realize, then I go back to that phrase. And this is a design for living that really works. That goes so much deeper than just that'll go so much deeper if you allow it. So I started doing a bunch of what time is it? Oh shit. All right. Sorry. I started doing a bunch of like, these big book studies. I was feeling restless, irritable, and discontent. So I started doing a bunch of big book studies. My buddy Matt and I, well, he did this thing called BBA, and then he said you should do this, bro. This is awesome. So I did it, and BBA takes like 6 months, and then I really didn't sing to me, but I did it, and I felt better for it, and continued to help people. And then I met my new sponsor, Roby, after she spoke at the Bronx, and then she takes me through this different version. It's not this. It's not different. It's the same version with more questions. Like it's more of a broken. It's called the Hyannis Big Book step study, and man, it took me a year and a half to do also to write an inventory, and it's the most thorough inventory I've ever done in my life. Like she said, all right, it's time to write a sex inventory, and I said, all right, cool, no problem. So we're just going to write it on just the women I haven't written a sex inventory on up to now. She said, no, we're writing an inventory on every girl you've ever kissed. I said, holy shit. I said, that's a lot of people. She said, what do you mean? I said, I bartended for 18 years. I don't even know their names. I said, Roby, one night I kissed 27 people in one night. She said, why? I said, because they told me I wouldn't. Like every girl that came to the bar, I kissed her and gave her a free drink. I said, I got to write inventory on that. She said, yep. You want to get down to causes and conditions on why you behave the way you behave? Let's go. Write all that down and then go over it with a sponsor. It took hours for us to go through this. I don't even know if we're done. Like I'm pretty sure we finished it, but I keep finding pages at places like I got pages everywhere, everywhere. I live by the philosophy that if I have a chaotic floor, I have a clean mind. It could be BS. I don't know. Works for me. It's not moonshine. I promise. This. It looks like it, but it's not. Um, I had a real moment in Alcoholics Anonymous when this guy in the Bronx said, if you're having a problem with God, change him from a noun to a verb. And then in 84 to 88, it really rang to me. And it said, we're a spiritual program of action. It takes action, action, and more action. Guess what a verb is? It's an action. Um, so I come across this passage. First, God for me is like this symbiotic relationship. Okay. And if this doesn't work for you, that's fine. I don't care. Works for me. I hope you find something that works for you. But this version, this really, really, it stings to me. It stings to my soul. And when you're looking for whatever higher power you need to go for, whatever sings to your soul, hold on to it and nurture it and love it. And and listen, sorry. I hate when I get the burps. That's why I don't. And listen to it. So I'm sitting outside. I got this meditation tree outside my house. And it's not a meditation, like that's just what I call it. Because if not, it's just a tree and it's annoying. So I call it a meditation tree because I'll sit out there and I'll get quiet and me and this tree will have a conversation. It's the best listener I've ever had in my life. But I looked up and I started meditating about my relationship with this tree. And my relationship with this tree is a lot like my relationship with God. See, God needs me as much as I need God. Because see, if I didn't believe in God, God wouldn't be working in my life. Not the version that's working today. There's always this background version that got me here, right? I can't deny that. I came into Alcoholics Anonymous on the wings, on the back of my mother's prayers. Like, that's the only way I get here on other people's prayers. Because I wasn't coming. I guarantee I wasn't coming. I was okay with staying in jail, but I wasn't coming here until my dad looks at me and goes, "You're going to AA." And I went, "Oh, yeah, I could do that, couldn't I?" So I came to you. But God, me and God need each other. Like, I need to believe, and God needs me to believe. And this tree needs me to breathe. Like, I breathe out carbon dioxide, and he sucks it in. And I'm just calling the tree a he because I'm a dude, and that's what I do. Okay. But and then the tree processes that carbon dioxide and puts it out as oxygen. And there's one thing in this world that we as humans cannot live without, and it's air. And the one thing, and I look at this tree and I get up every morning and I'll open the door and I'll look at that tree and I go, "Thank you. Thank you." What are you doing, John? John, you're unmuted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. Just don't do it again. Just kidding. No, and I take the metaphor from this tree, and then I look at God and I go, "Wow." Because see, God is everything or he is nothing, and maybe God is both, right? Because if God is everything, he's also nothing. Because nothing, something, there's your paradox, right? I live in a world of paradox. I call my spiritual beliefs, I named them after this book, The Spirituality of Imperfection. Um, it's one of the greatest books ever written, you know. So the guy, and then there's this, and this might rub some people the wrong way, but there's a part in 84 to 88 that says, reach out to outside sources, call your rabbi, call your priest, call your, what else are we going to call them? Call your imam, right? The imam's not in there, but if they ever print a new version, I bet it will be. Even though they don't really, never mind, shut up. I got 3 minutes left. See, this is what happens, y'all. Like the meeting before this meeting in my head was amazing. Y'all should have been there. But there's this thing I read about who God is and what God is. So this is from a and I'll shut up, Phil, I promise. This is from this guy named Rabbi Rami Shapiro. Okay. And he's at a conference. He's at a religious conference, a religious unification conference. And this lady asked this Catholic priest something, and the Catholic priest doesn't have an answer. So he says, "I know who can answer it, the rabbi." So he throws the rabbi under the bus to answer a question about Christianity. But listen to what he said, okay? "This is the genius of the Christian story," I said. "First, God blames Adam and Eve for sin and threatens them with death, but sin continues. Then God blames all humanity for sin and kills all humans with exception of Noah and his family, but sin continues. Then God chooses the Jews and threatens them with big sticks and entices them with big carrots to give up sin and live just and righteous lives, but sin continues. Finally, God realizes. Now, this is where you kind of look inward and compare your story with what God's going through right now, okay? And what he's describing. Finally, God realizes that it is God rather than humanity that's the problem. And hence it is God rather than humanity that must be punished. So God does the only logical thing. God becomes an innocent human and dies on the cross. Of course, the church says God died for our sins, but a deeper reading of the Christian story is that God had to die for God's own sins. That's a story I can understand, right? Because a part of me had, like, I had to die for my sins. I had a metaphorical death. I had to put the old Kevin to bed, right? He had to go to bed. Like there's a part in step 3 that says we are reborn. There's only vestiges. What you hear people say, I did the steps again this year. You want to know why? Because they're putting the old me to bed. Every time I do the steps, a part of me dies. Because sometimes I have to take out the old me in stages. That's just the intuitive thought in action. Okay. I love Alcoholics Anonymous and I love what you've done for me. And thank you for allowing me to be of service. And thank you for allowing me to be here 8 years. And I hope somebody got some hope out of this.